Okay, good. So I'm going to sync up my podcast with this. So I'm just listening to the podcast introduction. Hello, I'm Stephana Johnson. I'm the owner of Yogavati Fitness Studio in East Vancouver, and I am also the lead trainer here, holistic health and fitness coach. I'm also the author of Peace Doesn't Come in a Pill. And I'm doing this series as part of a way to contribute and to communicate the message that I am delivering through Peace Doesn't Come in a Pill, and also through the work that I do at Yogavati. And this specific episode is about the Pilot Your Way method and how I came to create it. So I personally use it to take back the controls of my life and find peace and happiness and success and joy, even when there's drama and trauma and turmoil and there's life happening. There's always a way to create and to find and discover our own joy. And when we find that, when we discover that we can take back the controls, and in fact, we are the pilots of our own life, it's a lot more, well, it's definitely empowering, but it also allows for us to get centered and to do what we need to do in life and to express ourselves. So I'm going to share with you the Pilot Your Way method and how it came about. I was in high school and I had taken an elective on aviation, thinking that I would be flying for most of that period, that was fifth period, and we were not flying at all. We learned a lot of theory. We learned about maps and terrain and slide rules and all kinds of interesting facts and figures and numbers, and nothing really practical. A lot of information that filled our heads, and that included a lot of fear around what there is that can happen that's bad. And I think that's just part of the teaching process, let's look at all the bad things so that you prevent them. And so that's part of it. That's fine. I liken it to, especially when I had my first child, I remember having stacks, literally as high as I was, with books on parenting and how to, the Baby Whisperer, you name it, every kind of parenting book and pregnancy book that there was, I was reading it and filling my head with all kinds of fears instead of just being present. And that brings us to the first P of the Pilot Your Way method, because piloting is not just an analogy of being in flight and being in control of your life. It is also the method that I use, and it's an acronym for the method, the Pilot Your Way method. P being presence and practicing presence. So I went out to, after graduating or completing the course in aviation, we were able to go and fly with a flight instructor. And so when I walked on the tarmac and saw this little tiny airplane and all of the things in my head started turning on of the fear, my instructor knew that, and he could perceive that this child, I was 15, was incredibly scared and was not present at all. I was not really seeing what was in front of me, even though I was standing right there physically. Most of my attention was fixed on ideas that I'd been reading about, or pictures that I'd seen from TV, or other ideas that my mind was making up. And so I was making meaning out of that. And that energy was pulling my attention away from my focus of the present moment. And he knew that, and he used very simple techniques to bring me back to the present moment. Something as simple as touching our environment. We're human beings that many times, most of us have the tactile ability. We have the senses of smell, and if we can use them to keep us in the present moment, that helps. If those smells, though, kick us out of the present and take us back into another moment or a different energy, that can remove us from the present. So we must be aware of that. And that goes back to my first 5 principles, is that awareness is crucial in everything that we're doing. as we begin to understand how simple this is, and we've seen it in many, many different ways, and mine is different than Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, because I want you to understand that being present is something that we must practice. It is in any given moment. In this next 15 minutes, I'll be having to pull myself back to the present many, many times and practicing that. Sometimes I'll use my breath. Sometimes I'll use just my intention, what my original intention is with communicating this message. And that's what we have to do, is practice this. Many of us don't have the opportunity to practice being present because life is on this Ferris wheel that's spinning and spinning and spinning out of control. And that's what I hope that we can take away from this, is that we want to take back our controls from the inside out. So when I arrived and I'm there at the airplane and I'm seeing this airplane, but I'm not really seeing it because it's filtered through all of the pictures and the ideas that have been put, that I have allowed into my head and allowed to kind of take hold and start to grow like a weed in the garden. And that's something that's really important to understand. And this gentleman, this flight instructor, who is an amazing human being, had me and communicated to me in a way that didn't judge me or make me wrong for being scared or trying to put up a strong front. But instead, he allowed me to become more present by recognizing what is in the moment. And that was profound for me. It took me quite some time to actually digest that and assimilate that and have that integrate into who I am as a person. But it affected me so greatly in that moment, because I was able to then go and experience that next hour of being in flight and have my first flight in a small vessel that was life-changing when we actually were able to take off, and I could experience that instead of being scared or being in my head or numbing myself out with a pill or, all the things that we do, but instead just being and experiencing. So when he had me touch the airplane and just feel, I had a tactile connection. And that's something that a lot of us are missing in today's culture, because we are so digital and we're so, the virtual world is prominent in our lives today. And so I invite you to touch and to feel the texture of your life, smell, listen to the sounds, and practice that as your gift to being present to your life. We continued to walk around the airplane, and I would touch the fuselage and I would touch the propeller, which wasn't moving, and I would touch the different components of the airplane, and I was able to connect and communicate with that airplane. And at Yogalachi, what we do in every class and in every session, we are reconnecting with our bodies and reconnecting with our senses by practicing presence. So that's P, the practicing presence step of Pilot Your Way method. And when going back to the airplane and being with the pilot and the instructor, we got into the cockpit, and the cockpit was very tiny. So it's a very small vessel on the inside, and there's this glass dome, and you see the outside, and there's a little door, and it's much smaller than a vehicle. So just a sheet of metal under your feet, and there's the earth beneath you. It can be disheartening. And he recognized that the moment we were in, and I'm going through the different, all of the gauges in front of me were quite different than what I'd seen in my books. So once again, he helped me practice being present by touching and inviting in connection with that, allowing me to be more present with that, the throttle and the tactile, and work through that and feel the heavy pressure of against my ears, and to listen to the different sound as the propeller started to take off. And each moment I continued to work through that and become more present. All of that fear and that anxiety settled, and I was able to experience peace And in fact, quite a bit of exhilaration because of being present and practicing presence. Now, at the time, I wasn't understanding that I was practicing presence, but I'm saying that now because that's the tool that we want to use, and that's the gift of our life, is that we can practice being present, even when it's very difficult. And sometimes we've gotten into the habit of running away or taking a pill so that we can avoid the sensations, instead of allowing that information, whether it's pain or whether it's discomfort or anxiety, to inform us and to provide us information that we need in order to create our lives and take hold of the controls of our life, and know that when we're in control of our lives, we also want to have a destination. So now I'm going to back up for just a moment and talk about the pre-flight plan, because before we even took off, unbeknownst to me, the instructor had completely set up a flight plan for us. And he had been in communication and done the preliminary checks. Now, he had done some of it with me, but with the bigger components, he had done prior. And for each of us in our own lives, we need to begin to do our own pre-flight checks and to establish what's the destination that we're going to, even if it's just in the next hour. And then as we get practiced with creating our own lives and taking back control of our lives, we can practice creating further out into the future. A year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now. And when we create from that place and that understanding of that destination, our lives can look a whole lot different. They don't have to be so topsy-turvy all the time, but when they are, we have that destination in mind and we can make course corrections. And that's what I hope to teach you through the Pilot Your Way method, to teach you how simple this is, that we can take back the controls of our lives. We can have the peace, the happiness, the joy, the relationships, even, like I say, when things are topsy-turvy. I'm going to give you a personal example of it right now. I'm in the middle of establishing a business for the first time in my life where I have a significant overhead, a significant amount of responsibility. And I am also in the middle of a divorce. After 17 years of marriage, I am just recovering from a severe illness. And I am also a mother of 2 amazing children and have enormous sense of guilt and sadness that I am not 100% able to just be their mommy. And so there are a lot of things that are going on. I'm not living in a vacuum here, preaching in some ivory tower. This is practical experience, because every single day I get up and have to practice this and come back to my heart space and come back to love and come back to reconnecting to this own body. Prior to that, I was completely disconnected from my own body because of sexual trauma and abuse in my experience in my past. And that had me completely thrown out of this body. I didn't want to be anywhere near this body because there was so much shame and pain and suffering near this body. And yet here I am. This is what I know I'm here to do, to serve. So I invite you to take whatever you can from this and understand that these components, if they resonate, the practicing presence is, it's not something that will be foreign to you once you begin to settle in to you. Because your home, this body, can actually be and communicate such gifts. And I'm so grateful that I was able to reconnect to this body and to be able to use not only my physical body, but my mind and my thoughts and my spirit to express what I can express, and get out of that idea that, oh, you have to be perfect or I have nothing worthy to say. Those are ideas that we need to let go of, because I know you have something valuable to deliver, to communicate, no matter what that is. I don't know what that will look like for you, but that's what I hold for you, is that you know that for yourself and communicate that and express that. So that's today's episode. And tomorrow we're going to talk about the I of Pilot Your Way and continue on with that. So I will say happy Thursday, September 1st. I'm Stephana Johnson with yogalachi.com, YOGILACHI.com. Peace and blessings.